It's a shame. I went to see The Last Voyage of the Demeter last night, and my date and I were the only people in the theater. Not that there isn't a sense of awesomeness when you go to a theater, and you find that it's all your own, or that I told my date that I rented the whole theater for her, even though I knew she didn't believe me. But man, a movie like this deserves to be seen by more people. It's original horror, adapted from one of the best novels in horror history, performed by an amazing cast, and directed by a visionary who deserves a shot at bigger and better movies. So before I get into the review, I just want to implore you all to go out and check out The Last Voyage of the Demeter in theaters so we get more movies like this in the future. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. The Last Voyage of the Demeter is now in theaters from Universal Pictures. It's directed by Andrei Orvidal and written by Bragi F. Schutt, Stefan Rzawiecki, Zach Olkewicz, and based on the chapter Captain's Log from Bram Stoker's Dracula. The Demeter is a cargo ship from Romania filled with 50 strange crates heading on a trip across arduous waters destined for England. Misplaced scholar Clemens, played by Black Klansman's Corey Hawkins, makes his way on board with a crew of scurvy gents, including character actors Game of Thrones' Liam Cunningham as the captain, David Dastmalchian as first mate Wojciech, and sailor Olgarin, played by Stefan Kapicic, who was the voice of Colossus in the Deadpool movies. When the Demeter sets off, a stowaway named Anna, played by the Nightingale's Aisling Franciosi, is found in the hull touting that an ancient evil is on board. Soon crew members begin toppling with a serious lack of blood every time night falls. Turns out the Count Dracula, played by go-to tall monster actor Javier Botet, is on board and he's super hungry. The Last Voyage of the Demeter extends one of the coolest chapters in Bram Stoker's Dracula in a blockbuster way. This is epic storytelling. Sure, we know Dracula is going to make it through the voyage and eventually start sucking on Mina's neck bone. But there still is a lot of story to tell as we're introduced to an interesting cast full of talented actors worth investing in. Director Andrei Orvidal delivers his biggest and best film since his first feature, Troll Hunter. While I loved The Autopsy of Jane Doe, it was a small-scale horror movie. And while it had its moments, I really felt Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark wasn't all that scary and much more kid-friendly than I'd hoped. Here, Orvidal is able to tell a much more sophisticated tale with adult characters going through absolutely harrowing horrors, dealing with themes that feel mature and thus more interesting than a bunch of kids running away from a monster on bikes. Each member of the crew seems to be having a crisis of faith, be it believing in God, science, the future, peace, or even themselves. This trip means opportunity for the crew, taking them away from the old world ways of Romania and closer to the more forward-thinking land of England. Well, as forward-thinking as you could be in 1897. As the Demeter sets sails, the crew sees nothing but a better life ahead, and while it is tough enough on the high seas, add a vampire to the mix, and this trip becomes downright treacherous. The set design is fantastic, as we get to know every inch of the ship by midway through the film, making it part of the tension as characters venture into some of the dark places where we know evil is hiding. From the costumes to the props used, everything looks and feels absolutely authentic. Everything feels drenched in seawater and warped by time. You usually don't see this level of detail and craftsmanship in horror films, but this one looks and feels like you've been transported back to the dark and dirty times of 1897. The ship itself becomes an obstacle course for the sailors as they go below and above decks, and even into the sails themselves to evade Dracula's fangs. You're not going to find a better cast of character actors than what you find in The Last Voyage of the Demeter.
All of the main roles are played by actors you've seen many, many times before. Liam Cunningham is an icon and is fantastically gritty as the captain of the Demeter. He's given a very meaty role here with a lot of emotions to juggle. David Dastmalchian is equally gruff as the first mate and serves as a great foil to Corey Hawkins, who shines in the lead role of Clemens, whose name isn't on the manifest, so his fate remains an outlier to the main story. While many have joked about including a black person in a period piece, his race is at least addressed in the story and ends up giving him some strong motivation to be on the ship. Aisling Franciosi does a lot with what could be a one-note role as one of Dracula's concubines who is struggling to maintain her own humanity. I also thought little Woody Norman, who we last saw starring in another awesome horror movie, Cobweb, does a heck of a job with a lot of emotional lifting for such a young star. All around, the actors work well together, and it really seems like they're giving it their all to make this film work. This helps because each of them have deep backstories and motivations that make you want to care for them, rather than just being fodder to be eventually drained by Drac. Javier Botet fleshes out the close-ups of Dracula, while the actor often seems to be working from the same bag of tricks in most of the roles he's given. This one is one of the first movies that I didn't instantly recognize his bizarre movements. There's a lot of CG done with Dracula, but all of these shots really feel incorporated into the live-action stuff. So much better than what we've all gotten used to with the rushed superhero CG-heavy films of late. And this Drac, he's scary as hell, which is no easy feat. While there have been scores of Dracula and vampire films made, even though this one looks not too different from many of the other incarnations that we've seen, everything about this version still feels fresh and new. With everything going for this film, I really do wonder why it didn't do so well in theaters. Vampire films are usually pretty popular. Scary stories to tell in the dark seem to do decently. Some have theorized that the name wasn't grabbing enough. The Last Voyage of the Demeter is a mouthful, and it also doesn't have any indication that there will be vampires in it. It also lacks a big-name actor attached to it, but horror movies rarely do these days. The fact that this was released at the end of the summer might be a factor, though it's hard for this cinephile to comprehend. A lot of people want to go out rather than stay inside and watch a 2-hour horror movie, especially when the days of summer are numbered. Still, it's a mystery, and I'm sure those behind the film are trying to understand it all as well. I hope that even though The Last Voyage of the Demeter didn't do well in the theaters, it'll find an audience and surface as a cult hit, as the film really does deserve to be seen and enjoyed by many. The Last Voyage of the Demeter indeed is an epic in size, scope, and subject matter. It seemed to have spared no expense with the amazing sets, and the entire cast does their absolute best. Seek this one out, in theaters if you can. But no matter where you see it, you're in for one of the best Dracula films you're going to see in ages. What are your thoughts on this film? Have you seen it? And if you didn't, why didn't you get out to the theaters and check it out? Let me know down in the comments.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're